Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. We're a week late, and it's all Steve Baxy's fault. And I can say that because he's not here to defend himself.
Well, I think Steve is so fucking powerful that he doesn't even need to be here to defend himself. It's like that, just mere presence alone can get him shaken. So I'd be careful of you messing with the Death God Storm, because those winds be blowing. Those storm be brewing.
Fucking Steve Baxy Simps, you hate to see it. So anyway, Alfie, what are we reviewing tonight?
Tonight we are reviewing the Josh Trank directed, Max Landis written, found footage, superhero, sci-fi, horror movie. There's a lot of things going on with this one, called Chronicle.
Indeed. So this was, it's funny because for years I've always gotten Max Landis and Josh Trank confused. Anytime anything comes out about one of them, I'm like, oh, the fucking guy that did Chronicle. And the answer has been yes, and it's because I didn't remember that they worked on this together and that they were different people. I thought this was just the one guy, writer-director kind of thing.
They've got a lot of similar overlap. Josh Trank seems to be, in general, a nicer and smarter guy, but that's compared to Max Landis, that's not saying a lot. But that's how I feel like that is fair. To be fair to him, he's only been he maybe did some property damage thing. Max Landis is a rapist. So just to be fair to Josh Trank's reputation, we'll clear that up, just opening statement, because I wouldn't want to get compared to that as well. So just to be fair to him.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just I didn't even know about that one. I just knew about the shitty Star Wars takes and all the tanked films and stuff.
You know about the fucking his Superman DC pitch?
Yeah, the fucking guy at work was telling me about it. I'm like, no, that's dumb. I hate that. Because it was the fucking Batman trains Superman or some shit. I'm like, no, fuck that.
Agent of Batman Superman was what it was gonna be, and it's oof.
Yeah, no thanks. But all that being said, I can kind of see why this film was kind of a breakout success for the two of them. Everyone can hear Leah in the background. I can understand why this was such a breakout success for them, because in all fairness, this is a really well done film. I think a lot more of it comes from the acting as opposed to the script in and of itself. I think the script is good, it's serviceable, but I think what really sells this movie is the performances, and likely the fact of the timing when it came out, and the fact that it kind of caught on to that fad of the found footage film in the late 2000s, early 2010s. I think that helped give it a good push, and it kind of is the movie that I think did the most with trying to stretch what you could do with a found footage film. So I wouldn't I'm annoyed when I see people have shitty creators and then take the thing that they did that's widely received as good and try to explain why it's actually bad because the person is bad. I'm like, no, people are complicated and bad people can make good things, and you just kind of have to deal with that.
Yeah, your personality, well, it dictates what you write, but it doesn't dictate how good you are at doing it. There's no there's no aspect of your fucking like morality that means you aren't good at like picking the right word for a sentence. Like, come on, guys. It's like it's the same way that damn, that asshole's a really good mathematician. Like that's a skill. It's not like a personality trait.
Right. Yeah. It's just one of those funny things to kind of see this looking back, and you know, you can really see where a lot of that clout came from. And I think you've seen this more and more in the years since, because this is 2010s. This movie's 12 years old at this point of review. But like, you know, you kind of see the fact that like someone does something and it gets widely received, and most of the time it's like with online creators at this point. But like, it gets widely received, and then they just become the most like full of themselves assholes because they get like pumped up with so much ego. And I think that's like, it's certainly not a new thing. It's just in the age of social media, it's a lot easier to, you know, put your fucking foot in your mouth, as it were. Because I mean, I would love if I only knew. I think it's Landis. I think this one goes back to Landis, but I can't recall. I'd be happy if I only knew Landis for this movie and not for his shitty Ray is a Mary Sue Star Wars take.
Yeah, that
right?
Landis, yeah.
Yeah, but like, unfortunately, it's funny because fucking Ray as a Mary Sue has eclipsed any actual creative work the man has ever done.
Yeah, that's like his fucking like historical landmark, because that just expands past Ray. But that was the big like first. He was the guy that kind of introduced that to the cultural lexicon. So like, fuck that. We're gonna be dealing with that for the dawn of time now, thanks to him.
Yeah, pretty much. So I don't know. It's an interesting film to go back to with like all the context, because I mean, I really enjoyed this movie when it came out. I owned this movie on Blu-ray. Funny enough, because I liked it when it came out, and I ended up buying it. So it was a good choice, Alfie. I didn't have to do anything but go through my DVD collection to find it.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So I mean, it is like a really good movie. I think it's interesting, especially as, you know, the sad thing of how many like school shootings and mass shootings and stuff have ballooned in the decade plus since this. Certainly those weren't new when this came out, but like the comparison is just so blatantly there that the main character in this, Andrew, is like the school shooter but with superpowers kind of thing, is kind of the personality that is portrayed on here. And that's more or less what he becomes. You know, he's this kid who's grown up both in social life and his home life with absolutely no power, and constant reminding of the fact that he is powerless, and then he's suddenly given this immense power, and it like completely corrupts him. The trauma of his life completely takes over, and his ability to empathize is overshadowed by that power. What I feel is interesting in talking about that is how that archetype of the school shooter, as we know it, as like the bullied individual who lashes out, while there are certainly cases where that's what has happened, in reality that's actually more myth than truth. As far as like the kind of, as we see with Andrew in this film, the intense and hurtful level of bullying, the fact that he's like routinely beaten up and stuff, that actually is like more exaggerated and not as prevalent in the actual history of these things. So it's, I guess the point I'm trying to get to is this movie does some really interesting character work with that, but unfortunately in doing so, it kind of furthers a narrative that has almost been used to justify these types of acts of violence.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting because it's not that. I guess this is what happens when you get to learn more about like the creators' personal lives and stuff. Is like this isn't like Josh Trank and Max Landis like were that kid. This isn't from a place of like ignorance. These are guys who are like fans of superhero books and nerd stuff and everything. And we're on a fucking show called Geeky Gentlemen. Like, I think we are like the most qualified people to talk about. Man, school fucking sucks, and getting bullied fucking sucks. Like I think that's a pretty good place to like be able to approach it. But often what can come from that is almost a kind of like complete disdain for your younger self, and like that version of you that got bullied, and like you look back and you're like, oh man, if I knew what I knew then, that shit would have never happened. I would have approached it differently, kind of thing. And I think a lot of, and that's positive in a way, because if you look back at your past self and you don't cringe, you're kind of doing life wrong, because that means you haven't grown. But at the same time, take it easy on yourself a little bit, which is like, it's always hard to do, but like, you are just a kid, like you don't know these things, kind of thing. So I wonder if this came from a place of having the Andrew character played by Dane DeHaan as kind of that surrogate for, man, I hate myself like that, this is what I could have done, this is kind of like the dark, like every fucking like bad impulse I've ever had, like if I just kind of let it out and was given the means to do that. And then you've got the other characters who are more so in the same way that like you get these powers, and this is a trope often used in superhero media, but I think this does it really well, where the powers just let you be yourself more, or let you just, whatever's inside you already just like gets amplified. So the other two kind of become more themselves, and the dude who's initially more just kind of ambivalent and kind of the stereotypical kind of just like, I'm not really bothered with anything, the philosophical like, I'm going to use these tropes to avoid caring, grows empathy and actually does start to care about the world, because now his mind's kind of been enlightened a bit by like, wow, this is amazing, we can do all these things, this is like I never thought of this before. And then you get Michael B. Jordan's character, who is more just, oh, this is cool, but I've still got my regular life. Like he's more so the powers aren't really going to change him, except just making him get a new friend group and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's all really interesting. And when you put it in the context of like the school shooter like stereotype, I think it gets at least somewhat of a pass, because it is at least trying to be honest from the perspective of like people who like live that experience and the honest like feelings of it, rather than say some fucking jock dude. I mean, don't have any jock filmmakers, are there? But like that,
Zack Snyder.
Yeah, I guess so. But like it's not. This isn't from a place of ignorance that is trying to perpetuate a stereotype. I think it is just from like creatives putting themselves back into high school mentality and what that kind of tells you about them.
No, I think you're absolutely right, and the narrative that this feeds into is actually something created almost, if you feel like becoming depressed, looking into the history of like post-Columbine and the way that the United States like social structure or social conscious around gun violence kind of formed. It's almost right out the gate after Columbine that you have this narrative of, oh well, they were all bullied, that's why they did this, is because they were treated badly, and it was a way to take the blame and put it on the victims. And it was a narrative created by the gun lobby right out the gate as a defense. It's really like sickly fascinating. But I think there's something to say. It worked so well, it caught on so well, and like I remember I used to believe that about a lot of these like school shooter situations. I used to believe that narrative because there is a fundamental truth of that's how you react. Those are the thoughts you have when you are on the receiving end of being bullied. So like it's a very kind of natural place to go to. And so I think you're right that there is a certain level of truth and honesty of lived experience in this that is ultimately like what makes it story-wise as impactful as it is. I still would say that I think the acting of it, the performances is what sells it as well as it does. Because I feel like if you had less talented actors but the same script, a lot of the emotion and intensity of a lot of those scenes that really make you empathize with and also kind of fear Andrew at the same time just would not land. Like that, the script does a lot, but I feel like the acting is probably something like a 70-30 balance here for what ends up selling this.
I think so as well, because in a lot of ways with found footage movies, like that really highlights that, because it is probably, it's much closer to like theater, because you don't have as much control over, like you're still staging things, you're still doing storyboards, you're still composing the shot, but just by the nature of it, one character nearly always has to be holding the camera. And if you want to do it believably, you kind of have to let a lot more improv happen and a lot more the characters are kind of just talking the shit and just to make it feel like, oh, this isn't staged, this is really happening kind of thing. You have to use angles which aren't necessarily the most flattering, or you can't quite get a good view of everything. And I think Dane DeHaan especially really fucking sells that, because I'd be curious to know if someone like has like a figure of like how much of this film you can see his face versus just like him talking, because they do smartly like make sure that whenever there's like a really important scene where Dane DeHaan like you should be seeing his face, or at least like the back of him or like his actions or something, there's an excuse to have like a separate camera or the camera be away from him. But especially like in the middle points and the start of the film, a large part of that is he's just holding the camera and you're just hearing his voice and kind of how the camera's moving and what he's seeing, which I think does a really, really good job in this of like building empathy and putting you in the character's shoes, while also the actors are doing it in such a believable, like, oh, these are just fucking dumb kids way, where you buy the drama of it, you buy the fun of it, you buy the just kind of regular, normal life of it. And for found footage movies, often like you just wonder like, why is this found footage? Like nothing about this script or this format or like use the idea. It's just a trend, and especially like in the wake of this and like Blair Witch Project and all that stuff like that. Everything just was found footage just because it was the hot new thing, but there was no reason for it.
And it was cheap.
Exactly,
it was very cheap.
Exactly, right. Whereas this, I feel like, has a very clear like, this is the whole point of the premise is like, what would you do with this if you just found this? And like, I'm like, what would it be like to have superpowers? And that fantasy that we always kind of ask is putting that literally in just a kid's fucking video recorder and his camera. I think that is really, really smart as just a general just premise. And the way the actors do it and stuff, that they feel really natural with going up. And like Dane DeHaan especially, and Michael B. Jordan, like, because this is kind of what. It's funny because Michael B. Jordan especially looks like so much younger here than he normally does. He's become like such a fucking like studly, like a Adonis fucking Chad. But when he's here, he's kind of baby face. he's kind of, like you could already tell, like he's a really good at playing that naturally kind of charismatic character. And then Dane DeHaan is like, you can watch this fucking movie and be like, yeah, I understand why he got cast as Harry Osborn. Like, no shit. This is just Harry Osborn's fucking origin story.
Yeah, no, for sure. I will say that it's funny because we keep talking about Dane DeHaan and Michael B. Jordan, but like it's really interesting how those two are the performances that I keep talking about that like really sell the whole fucking movie. Man, if I could switch any two actors in this, it would be Michael B. Jordan character and the other guy. I can't remember the actor's name and I can't remember the character name, and I think there's a reason for that.
Yeah,
this poor guy is up with two just monumental, especially at their age, monumental actors. Because Michael B. Jordan would have been 22 or 24 when filming this. If it came out like so he'd be closer to 21. If this came out in 2010, they were filming in like 2009 or whatever. Like to be up with two monumental actors at such a young age, and then there's just him, and I'm like, man, they just oof. Like Michael B. Jordan really sells all his scenes fantastically, and I do love him, but man, just by the time you get to the end of this movie, like all the way throughout, this kid just has, I think, a really hard time, and I think he shows kind of why I think so much of the good of this movie is the performances. Because he's got some of the most stilted dialogue, and it's just, he can't quite deliver it naturally, because it is just a bit... like, every time he brings up a philosopher, I'm just like, no. Like, one, you're in high school, you're not learning about philosophy yet, like, 99% of the time anyway, but, like, two, it's just no. Like, you're just not... It's such an awkward way of kind of introducing it in the thing. It's kind of that... I wonder if this information will be important later, like screenwriting kind of dialogue. And unfortunately, the actor just isn't as natural with it as the other guys. And it's unfortunate because part of it is he has, I think, the hardest material to sell. This is kind of what I think you get with like your Max Landis Superman. Where it's a bit stilted, it's a bit awkward. So he's got like kind of the harder material to sell. It's not written the best, and then he's just unfortunately like any minor failing he has as a performer is amplified by the successes and albeit the easier things that the other two performers he's up with have, you know?
Yeah,
because like
that's completely fair.
Yeah, it's just, he's, like, overshadowed just by he's overshadowed by his girlfriend. He's overshadowed by Andrew's dad. It's a rough time to watch that. So, like, if you could switch Michael B. Jordan's character and that guy, I think you'd have damn near a flawless movie. And I don't know if the note or the thought about performance would have even entered my head as hard as it did with this rewatch.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much on the money. Is like you said, like that's where the script, and I'm sure that I don't think I'm gonna rag on the guy because he does a fine enough job, but it's just like again is you're being put in a situation where improv and on-the-moment decisions are the kind of key and kind of embodying that character just naturally. And like you said, embodying the bullied, kind of shy, shut-in nerd, not too hard for a fitter kid, you know? Like, David Hart, I think, probably, like, you know, he's just a charismatic dude and stuff like that, but, like, that is genuinely just what he's good at because that's kind of the vibe he has. Michael B. Jordan, the popular fucking, like, genius child that everyone loves. Oh, man, he's really going to struggle with that. Michael B. Jordan really fucking... Whereas... kind of like B-tier, C-tier actor playing the, maybe this kid's gonna be fucking Superman of this world. I don't know. Maybe we should have got a fucking, I don't know, see what fucking younger Henry Cavill was doing at this time or something. I don't know. But like, you needed someone, because that, like you said, that is the hardest role because that's the character that is the most, especially when you get to the end of it, spoilers, he's the only one that fucking survives. And he's meant to be the one that's, like, learned all the lessons and now becoming a kind of superhero type figure. And that's the thing that's the most unrealistic in this scenario. Now, I don't want to say, that's completely unrealistic, because I feel like that's a kind of weird assumption that I think a lot of people, if they actually, not everyone, but I think if a lot of people actually had powers and in the media landscape we live, a lot of people already would probably try that of just like, I'll probably do it, like just get the suit and stuff like that and probably just do the shit. They wouldn't necessarily be good at it, but I think a lot of people, their first response would kind of, it would either be self-gain or just fucking around or hiding it or being a psychopath, but superhero wouldn't be out of the question, or just helping people with it, not necessarily the costume and stuff, just being a decent person, I don't think necessarily is off the table. So I'm glad that's included here, but it is definitely the one you have to sell a lot more because people are going to go into it with a little bit more skepticism. Like, it already because of just the nature of it compared to the others, and kind of what we've been trained to as a society to like look at with like altruism and stuff. So I think all of that definitely is hard, and the script could have done a lot better to help that actor out. Just like if like if he's not gonna be fucking the amazing kind of just on the moment fucking Dane DeHaan screams, and how like he fucking will just turn on an instant to menacing, or just be completely sympathetic one moment, then at least give him some fucking like great memorable lines. And like there's not really any great memorable lines in this.
The one that kills me the most is the fight at the end. It's just like, this is where I think the ending battle is the one where it's just the worst, because it's just he's just screaming Andrew over and over and over again.
Yeah, and it's not like pain, like kind of cool fucking screams like some actors can do, where it's just like, fucking, oh my god, he's screaming at them, it sounds so cool. It's just they do it. That's all he starts fucking saying, and it's just like, come on, man, it's clearly not working. Try some shit out. Like, maybe this is where the fucking philosophy quote comes in handy, you know, like some shit. Where's the fucking Superman speech? Like, I don't know, but like,
I mean, it's like, what really kills it is you can kind of tell they wanted to just keep writing the villain, because Andrew gets the fucking badass line.
Yeah, it does.
I'm an apex predator,
and that's cool. That's some cool shit. But like, it doesn't. There's no counterbalance to that. Like, you introduce the Andrew character, and he starts as like his descent happens, and his support network gets taken away from him, and he gets more and more kind of just spiraling, which I think is handled really well, because it's not like, oh, and then there's a switch and now he's just evil. It's just like he makes a really bad mistake after a really bad night, and then we just get the glimpses. We don't necessarily know how much time has passed of just like impulse decision, boom, then worst possible thing someone could ever say to you in your fucking bed as you're recovering from fucking burns of trying to help your sick mother. And then fucking, yeah, like, okay, I completely buy that after that point, this kid is just fucking, like, off the rails, pure rage. And maybe after that night, he wouldn't have been. Like, I feel like that is just a pretty good example of a powder keg where the kid just fucking lost it in, like, a rage-filled thing. And because he's got such power, like, that rage is going to destroy a whole fucking city. But then after that night, maybe if they did get away, he would have calmed down. I think he needed a lot of fucking therapy, because he was going down a really kind of like fucking, I shouldn't. The lion doesn't feel bad after taking down a gazelle. Like, you need to have a conversation about that for sure. But like, it's not.
Yeah, there's a tragedy to it.
Exactly,
there definitely is.
So like, I think that's you need. But you've got that really great scenes with Andrew. But if you're going to try and make it kind of like two sides of this coin, and then you have one middle part of it, we kind of need to see more interesting stuff on the middle side of it. Like, okay, and they kind of set it up because he starts filming stuff on his own as well. So you could have just had, after some point in the middle, maybe after Steve's death, which is the Michael B. Jordan character, you could have had, like, oh, now he starts making his diary now that he's getting really into kind of like, okay, maybe I want to use altruistic things, and you kind of parallel that back and forth as Andrew starts getting more and more off the deep end. Maybe we see, like, because that's something I think is missing with this, is he says he wants to help people with it, but there's never a scene of him actually using it to help someone. And I feel like something like that would have gone a long way into, you know, like, sympathizing into the audience of like, okay, no, that is like a cool, like, fucking save a cat out of a tree or some shit. Like, just something that's like, and then his friends maybe rag on him for it. It's like, oh, the fuck are you? Like, are you doing this thing? It's like, he's like, I don't know, man, I saved the cat. Like, I don't know, there's something you could have, and again, I don't want to rewrite the movie because I think it's a good movie, but in terms of just making your other side of the conflict more interesting so that when he's the only survivor, it doesn't kind of feel like, man, I wish Steve survived. You know, like, oh man, or maybe it would have been fucking more interesting if fucking Andrew did win, and like he just ruled. Like, what would that look like? Like a sequel. Like, how does this fucking kid, like, because he's not bulletproof, so like he's still gonna have to be fucking careful. Like, how long does he last? I don't know. I feel like there's more interesting ways you could have gone with that. And to get the ending that they do have, they kind of needed to spend more time with him.
Yeah, no, I think that is the biggest failing script-wise and stuff. I think I'm gonna parrot one of Steve's points because it's actually the thing I find probably most interesting in like a meta narrative way about this. Is I remember I was talking to Steve about this movie years ago, and I don't know if this is still Steve's like take on the found footage aspect of it. But I remember he said to me at one point, he's like, there's just no way that like all of this footage could have been collected. I'm like, no, man, it's fucking... they nearly destroyed a city and they were flying and shit. Someone collected and pieced together very carefully every single second of footage they could find of these guys. Like, come on. You tell me they wouldn't do that?
There'd be a fucking biopic. There'd be fucking documentaries and shit. Yeah, they're like the biggest event in human history.
Yeah, I know. I fucking love that as just like the fact that by the end all of it happens out in the open and like there's just such a like focus on the cameras, which is I think the thing to the directing credit. I think they do a lot of really cool tricks to keep the found footage like framing of this that I've heard some people say it feels like cheating, but I'm like, nah, it's just really well done and clever, and I think it works within the thing. The fact that we get crane footage shots because the character has telekinesis is cool. The fact that, like, I love the shot where he just pulls everybody's cameras out of the tourist thing, and like, you're filming on, like, iPads and iPhones all in 1 second, and I'm like, that's just cool. That's just a cool idea. It's a little like narrative breaking that he's using the power for that in the moment, but you know what? That's his character at this point, is he just wants to document everything. That's really fascinating.
Yeah, and I think that's one of those things which that final battle, like the strongest part of it is because like the choreography is not very good. It's not like they've got the budget to do the fucking Man of Steel Zod fight that they kind of wanted to do with like what the idea of like the characters and stuff. There's some impressive shots and stuff, but like in terms of just like if you were to film that normally, it'd probably be pretty boring. The most interesting aspect of it is when it just cuts between a bunch of different formats. Of like, okay, here's a security camera, here's some dude in his fucking apartment, here's the actual camera, here's the police chopper, here's all this. Like, I think that's really cool of like, okay, so this is just after the fact, and this is just trying to build a timeline of like what happened with what you could get. I think that's a really cool approach to this kind of film, and it makes me wish that we got, I'd love like a Superman fucking movie with like trying to like just build off. Because the closest we get to that is like the BVS opening where you see Ben Affleck, Batman, like running into the city, and he just got the ground eye view of this battle between fucking Superman and Zod, and it's like the fucking craziest human thing you ever see. It's like a kaiju battle, but it's just two tiny dots in the sky. So even with Godzilla, you kind of know what's happening. With the Superman battle, they're so small and they're so fast. It's like, what the fuck even is going on? Like from that perspective, it's just so interesting. So I really, really like that approach. And we get like little tidbits of here of like what could be if you took that thing. So I think that's something really, really impressive. And the idea of using characters of telekinesis for the budget of this and the just general being able to have a character literally learn how to levitate the camera in script so that you can, like you said, like you can get shots of Dane DeHaan just talking with people is both really cool as a visual thing, but also really cool from a character standpoint, because when he starts to learn doing that is when he's like, oh, his barrier's not up anymore. He's letting other people in. Now you're in the same scene with other people. And then once it goes, the barrier doesn't necessarily come back, but now it's kind of like more frigid, more kind of sporadic. It's not as cleanly shot. Like everything's kind of switching between different time periods. More like when you get to the end of it, he's not as kind of calm and like methodical with how he like records things. Where he just, I'm just recording everything. By the time he's like planning to steal stuff for his mom's medication, it's kind of like jumping forth between time periods and stuff and all this kind of thing. I think that's really a cool way of having the movie mirror the character's mental state. Like that's just really fucking smart filmmaking. So I do want to give Josh Trank credit for that, because in the same way that the actors like really elevate this, I feel like if you had got really good actors and like this script, but no one knew how to fucking shoot it properly, I feel like then it would also not have come together how it did. So I think he deserves credit for that as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it's a very impressive feature. I don't think that this is a movie that was successful because of the fad. Like, I think Paranormal Activity is 100% successful just because of the fad that started. Like, Paranormal Activity, of course, didn't start found footage, but it really revitalized it. But I don't think it's like a very good movie, a very good horror movie. It's just the fad and like the gimmick of it that sold it. Whereas this, I do think it does a really good job. It ticks a lot of boxes outside of just being the fad. Would this be as good a movie as it is if it was just shot traditionally? If we remove the found footage aspect of it? I mean, maybe it might be a little worse because you don't have the coolness that the gimmick provides for the characterization. But end of the day, yeah, no, they really did knock it out of the park. Like, this is... I don't think you can call this a bad movie in good faith. I think everything about this really does work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
as
agree.
a collective. There's pitfalls and stuff, but as a collective, everything really works.
And I think that your point there is kind of a good thing to mention, that we don't necessarily get to bring up that much on Geeky Gentleman, of just like how much film really is just collaborative. Like often whenever you praise the writer of something or the director of it, and when we do comics a lot of the time it's a lot easier to just writer, artist, and then letterer and colorist, editor, and stuff like that. Like, but with movies, there are just so many people involved in the process, and a lot of the times it can just be like, in some cases, you can be like, this director's just got such a fucking like chokehold on things. Like, I think that's stuff that you can give like Christopher Nolan or like a Scorsese, where like they're so methodical with how they do things and like how involved they are with getting the actors and all these kind of things, where like, and involved in the script, where you can kind of like, all right, no, everyone still deserves credit, but it is fine to call this a Nolan movie, you know? Like, I think that is something that he's put in the work for that, and it's clearly got his feet all over it, where you can justify it, or someone like a Tarantino. This is, I think, an example of which is much more common in films, where it really does only come together because of every single working piece. And if you didn't have one element, it kind of falls apart. And when you say that, you're like, oh man, it's just barely holding together. It's like, no, because that's kind of the beauty of it, is despite all those kind of parts being like, the actor has a weak link, the script's not the best, the director isn't phenomenal, but you put it all together and it's like, oh, this is great. So it's just, I think that's really strange how like you get something that is stronger than the individual pieces on their own. Even though those individual pieces can be really strong, they're only brought out together as the whole package.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an interesting case of everybody's individual strengths balancing out the individual weaknesses. Because, you know, as much as we were talking about the one character's performance and stuff earlier, I really only noticed that on rewatch. Like, my initial time watching this, and I've probably seen this movie at least 3-4 times. Up until this rewatch, I'd never really like picked up on any kind of weaknesses in his performance compared to everyone else. So that's what that is the strength of the other performances overshadow any shortcomings, and like they do so only to a point. If you keep watching it and you keep analyzing it, yeah, you begin to see the cracks, but upon that initial go through, no, a lot of it really still hits and works really, really well. It's a very impressive film.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any in particular like favorite scenes or something that like the part of the movie that kind of sticks out to you the most?
the scenes with Andrew and his dad are probably the hardest for me to watch, but I think they are just so well done because the dad actor, as far as just being an asshole, my god, that guy kills it. But like just the way that the like intensity and the just quickness of it, like when his fucking dad runs into his room, slaps him upside the head, and just throws him on the floor. Like, it just happens so fucking fast. You know, like, you literally feel the shock of it. Like, just immensely because of how, like, visceral it is. It feels super real. It feels, you know, the camera angle and everything just makes it feel so like you're watching security footage or something, you know? And that was like legitimately intensely terrifying. And then just as those other scenes with his dad keep coming up, you know, it opens with his dad not like banging on the door. It gets to the scene with them in the basement, the scene when Andrew's trying to leave for school and his dad's kind of catching on with what he's doing. Like, all of those moments just hit so hard and they're so intense, and the way it all, like, culminates in the hospital room is just, again, I don't think the script entirely sells it, because just, I want you to apologize for me. It's your fault your mom died is a little like, I know he's an asshole, but, like, that just doesn't seem believable for, like, a human being to say. You know, people say a lot of stuff when they're grieving and when they're angry that, like, they know they probably shouldn't have, but I don't think anyone's like, it's your fault your mom died. Like, that's just maybe a little too much. But, you know, the acting sells it. The situation sells it, and it really does hit. It's intensely visceral. So, like, all of those scenes really, really hit for me. And like I almost dread watching because they really do stir some shit up. And then the other scene that I think is like I think this was even in the trailer. But this is the scene that I actually find it kind of like hard to watch. I kind of want to look away. Is the scene with Andrew and the spider?
Oh yeah.
Because it's just so like, you know, I've stepped on a billion fucking spiders, right? Like, it's just, you don't really think of it, but the fact that he's like torturing it is that's where it gets fucked up to me.
That's the thing where like that scene particularly I think is really interesting because it's like that's where I probably get the Max Landis fucking comic book nerd thing, because that's very like fucking Dr. Manhattan. Like, it's very just like open it up to see how it works kind of thing, and I think that's really interesting to do as a horrific display of control. Like, it's like you see telekinetic powers in fiction so often, but I think it's really impressive when writers or whatever creative is behind it can find ways to really display like a character's mentality, but like how they use their power. And I always think like whenever a character fucking starts dissecting shit, that's when you know like they've crossed like a line. And I think that's a really interesting kind of almost underused method of horror, but it's always so effective because I think there's a part of us that really just doesn't want to see that shit. Like, we can watch death, but whenever it's just like something that's curious and just kind of playing with the insides, like that's always kind of like gonna make people a little bit more weirded out than if they just killed someone outright. Like, I think that's always gonna inform you of the killer's like mindset and stuff. And thankfully in this it's just bugs, but once you kind of get into the mindset, it's like, oh no, he's starting to think of humans just in the same way. It's like, okay, well, where would have that led? Like, that wouldn't have been necessarily very good when he's gonna open up a fucking person for the first time and start poking around like that. I think that's really, really interesting.
I mean, and he starts to do that too. Like, I'm not sure. Did you watch the theatrical or director's cut of this?
I don't know which one it was because I just looked up online.
Okay. Fair enough. Did it have the scene with the teeth?
Yeah, when he's in the when he runs into the bathroom after he fights the bully and like pulls the teeth out, and he's like, I got this one really clean and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, like that's where it's leading. Is he's testing himself on people. I'm not sure if that's not in the theatrical cut or something. It's just like those moments are just so like tortured, and I think the director's cut mostly just has more of those scenes of Andrew using the camera in that crane shot kind of thing, and like there's just all these moments where you just hear his parents fighting or something, or his dad just yelling, and you'll do that. That shot is in the director's cut, but it does help to just further get you into the downward spiral Andrew's on in this film.
Yeah, no, I can imagine, and I think that's a good thing. What's funny about the dad actor is, like you mentioned, like he's really, really good. But like the first, it'd been a while since I'd watched this. So when I watched this the first time, and he turned, I was like, "It's fucking Steve Lombard from Man of Steel." What? How'd you watch this and then cast him as that? That's fucking. He's a way better actor than I thought he would have been, because he's the only other thing I've seen him in was fucking Man of Steel and like BVS, when he's just fucking Steve Lombard and he's like just there for a cameo scene and effectively. I'm just like, damn, he's really fucking good. Just a bastard. You could probably made him a villain. Like that seems like a waste.
Yeah, that's a good question. What's a good villain role that kind of like just seething rage kind of thing?
He probably could have been a really good Parasite.
Oh, that's a good idea. Huh. Yeah, no, it's a really intense scene. Like, it's well cast overall. The movie's got, 4 really, really strong actors in it, and the ones who don't hit as well aren't like unbearable to watch or anything like that. So it's a pretty solid solid production overall, no joke.
For sure. In terms for me of scenes I liked, I really just love the energy of when they're fucking around in the sky for the first time. Like, I think the actors do a really good job of just like, man, that'd be so cool. Like, that's just like the fantasy of like the superhero and stuff like that. And like, that's such a primal. And they bring it up of just like, this is fucking historic. We're doing it. Say you can fly. Say with your chest, I can fly. Like, that's just like, hell yeah, everyone would be so fucking pumped for that. Like, if you could do that, it's just such a... And I'm glad that's in there, because it had been so easy to kind of just, all right, 5 minutes, they kind of fuck around with it, and then it all immediately starts dark. I do appreciate the majority of this is just kind of like the fun of it, and then there's like hints of like it's going to go bad, and then there is a moment when it goes bad, but then it doesn't just... After the, like, I think like a lesser film would have been like, okay, after the truck incident, now he's bad. But it's like, no, he has the hint of it, but like the others kind of pull him back, and then it starts good again. It's only after the party where like shit really just, all right, now it's bad and it's just gonna keep going bad. But there's like a good ending in this fucking movie somewhere. There's like the fucking girl sucked his dick or some shit, and he was happy.
Yeah, he didn't get too drunk to throw up on the girl sucking his dick, and then his life just got turned around. Which is funny, because like that's the scene they're talking about. Like, fucking dude picks up the camera, and he's like, Andrew, you're so good, man. You're gonna be like, you're the best of us, and I'm so happy for you. Like, he's drunk and he's just being a total bro, and it's just like that's the moment where, like, you just kind of take a step back and watch this as someone that like understands the narrative, and you're like, oh man,
yeah.
Name a time when you got a scene like that and it turned out that way. Just name one fucking time.
That would be the most subversive thing you could do right now as a filmmaker, is like actually pay that off. Like, it's just, oh yeah, then the whole film past that point is happy days. It's like, well, I don't see that coming. I thought it was just gonna go to shit. I think that would be, but no, like, again, like that's a really, it just makes it more interesting to watch. And obviously, once you know where it's going to go, you don't lose it, but obviously, like, Andrew's going to go bad, and even if you see in the trailers, you kind of know where that's going to go. But I think there is just like, if you went in blind with this, up to a point, I think there is just kind of like, where's this going to go? Like, what's happening here? Like, is any of them going to be? Is going to be a new fucking kid? Is like, and they're going to team up on this fucker? Like I think there's a lot of there's a lot of ways of making it feel like real life, where it isn't just like, there isn't plot necessarily that forces this to happen. It is just the interactions of the characters and how they're wired and how they aren't kind of taking this as seriously as they should be is going to lead to disaster, but it's just a matter of when. And I think that's the smart way to play something like this. Whereas if you had more of a direct, ongoing structure, like say, like they had fucking teased the talent show since the beginning of the movie. It's like, I really want to do this talent show, but I don't know what I'm going to do. It's going to change my life. I know. Like, if you really overplayed your hand like that, I don't think it would work as well. I think the fact that it does take its time more and does kind of just have living in the moment and just how life happens is often the worst things are just those like spontaneous decisions or things that are outside of your control from a reaction, just overwhelming of emotions, I think all comes together and works really well. So I really like that aspect of it because I think that's really hard to do. It's really hard to get that close to not reality, but like the feel of reality. The kind of like awkwardness and randomness and the almost making it less believable than if you were a fiction, because with fiction there's like structure to shit and like things parallel each other that makes sense, and there's a lot of that in this, but there's also a lot in this of just like, well, that fucking just happened, that like that feels more like, well, yeah, that's kind of how it would go.
Yeah, no, for sure. I like how much of this movie, like, I like how many scenes in this movie would allow you to recut the trailer to make the entire plot a complete fucking, like, fuck you surprise. Because, like, you could recut the trailer for this and just make it look like it's a screwball comedy found footage movie about teenagers that get superpowers.
That fucking laugh track in there.
Yeah, you just like take all the scenes where they're just fucking around with the powers and like the shopping mall and shit, and like the scene of them like playing football and like hitting each other in the face with a baseball and shit, and you just recut it to be like this goofy comedy about some teenagers that get superpowers, and people are like, I guess I'll go see it. It looks kind of fun, and then they just walk out. What the fuck was that?
It just hits the fan. I think that might have been the smarter move, honestly. But then I think this got more reputation after people saw it. So maybe it wouldn't have been the smart idea, because again, it was a very low budget kind of throw out there film. But I don't like, definitely in retrospect, that would be a top tier fucking troll if they could have pulled that off.
It's just like cool how it kind of works that way. Of just, it seems like things are just getting better and things are gonna go okay for him, and then it's just, oh no. It's sad. It's a sad movie, Al.
It's a sad movie. He's my grandson. He's so sad. Why wouldn't she just suck his dick? Don't matter if you got a little puke on you. It's good for a growing girl.
Back in my day, whenever we got puked on when we were sucking a penis, we just kept on going.
Yeah, they don't raise them like they used to. I tell you, Grandma, can you stop talking about sucking dick every time we record Geeky Gentlemen? I'm sorry, you don't want my perspective.
Your grandma used to be the best dick sucker in Mississippiwana County.
God damn it. This is good shit.
Oh, man. Alright, since we're just getting to the point where we're talking about grannies sucking dicks, is there anything else to talk about with this movie? Or do you think
my favorite section of Geeky Gentlemen. Like on the YouTube timestamp. Fucking grannies dick sucking. What else to talk about this film? Would you, because this kind of started a thing, but then it quickly died off. And part of me does kind of like, man, I'd like to see where this goes. So I'll ask you two questions, because I think they have slightly different answers. So first off, if you had to pick any superhero character to have a found footage movie, which one would it be?
There is something that just kind of makes you wonder about Superman, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you do like a Smallville, like Chloe Sullivan kind of revamp, and like she's, you know, trying to work on her vlog and solve the weird mysteries of Smallville, and like it keeps just coming up to Clark, that could be kind of cool. Or, you know, other stuff. That's just the first thing that enters my head. you could do a really cool found footage Batman movie. I mean, technically it exists. It's called the Joker Blogs, so you can go watch that. But
Just do a fucking adaptation of that comic about the kids making the documentary about Batman, but it's a fucking movie.
yeah, like I think that's got some pretty good potential. Because like urban legend Batman's always a really cool idea to play with. Spider-Man, I feel like you could also do a similar thing with, of just like some fucking kids around Queens trying to figure out like who this Spider guy is.
Spider-Man, I think,
treat it like
almost
the Jersey Devil.
you could almost do this fucking exactly with Spider-Man, of like they kind of did with like that opening to like Homecoming, where like Peter's like making his fucking vlog. Like, what if you did a whole movie of like a Spider-Man movie, but only told to you through fucking Daily Bugle photos, news reports, fucking Betty Brand, MJ's vlog, and like Peter's own vlogs, like all kind of interspliced. That kind of slap.
Yeah, no, I think you could probably get away with that.
Especially because the character himself is a photographer, and like the more modern version of that would just be, well, he'd just be a vlogger then. He'd just be selling videos of Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm. Parker, how did you get this first-person video of Spider-Man swinging? I taped a camera to him, and he didn't notice until
just be
later.
like, look, man, he's got an OnlyFans, and I'm his cameraman. Like, who's gonna fucking question that? They're just gonna roll with it and move on. Parker, become a tier 1 sub immediately. We need more photos of Spider-Man.
I'm just saying, like, does Peter Parker's money troubles not exist anymore because Spider-Man could just create an OnlyFans? Is that kind of like a dead plot line in the comics at this point?
I mean, they'll find a way. Trust me, they'll find a way to keep that fucker poor for existence. Poor and virginal. That's what the Spider-Man editorial wants. No marriage, no money.
All right. I think that's pretty much it for this one. I think that's a
the
pretty good
other
episode.
the other one I wanted to ask you about.
Sorry.
You're all good. But I think I'm interested in what you say for this. So we did like the found footage, like horror, like genres and stuff. But then they kind of capped out. What horror movie, like you can be either just a character or like an icon or just a type of horror movie, would you have liked to see a found footage movie that they never made, or like they did make but it was kind of shit, so you want a better version of it?
I mean, it wouldn't work because like my favorite is Freddy Krueger, and I'm just like, nope, you can't fucking take a camera into the dreams. So that one doesn't work. But like, I feel like your slashers, Texas Chainsaw, I feel like would work really well for that, because they're like especially as you get like further into the franchise, and it's just like this whole family just loves doing this. I think you can get away with it. Oh yeah, and they just started fucking filming everything. Like I think that would just function with that like character the most. Not that I'd be particularly interested in seeing it, because I think Texas Chainsaw is kind of dumb. But yeah, so probably something like that, or your slashers, your Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees, those could work for it pretty well. But I would like to see something a little more experimental than just this house is haunted or there's a slasher. So I don't know, something maybe like a Saw movie that's all found footage would be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you've got the inbuilt premise there of fucking Jigsaw himself, so like you think that they would have done that. They're not above it. They're not above a trend.
Yeah, they really are.
It's not a trend anymore, so it would be subversive.
Yeah, there you go. That's how you do it. How about you? Any horror films, genres, characters you'd like to see try to do found footage?
I'd fucking love a Dracula adaptation like that, because that's exactly what the novel is.
The journals, yeah.
Yeah. Like, just do the fucking found footage Dracula movie where it's just modern day, and so all the journal entries are just fucking vlog things, and like every different journal entry pick a different format. Like the fucking the boat isn't necessarily the people on the boat recording it. It's just like the fucking police report or something. It's like the fucking like news anchor, like
just pulled into Whitby. This fucking cruise ship got fucking annihilated by something. We don't know what happened. And Jonathan Harker is the one who's doing the vlog, and then gets all the different characters and stuff. Like, and you don't get to see Dracula that much, but you just get to see the fucking way. That would, oh man, it would go so hard. It would be like the best. It would literally be the most accurate adaptation of Dracula ever, which is the funny thing.
Because there's a movie called Bram Stoker's Dracula, which is the least accurate Dracula movie.
It's just how we live, man. But no, Dracula found footage. If anyone wants to make that movie, just hit me up. I'll write the script.
Just gonna like read the novel again and just like modernize it.
You could
slightly.
literally do it like, well, because of the length of it, you probably want that to be like a show if you want to do it like fucking word for word. But like, if you did a trimmed down version of it and speaking, you could fit that into a pretty kick-ass movie.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'd agree with that. That'd be pretty dope. Alrighty, let's go ahead and do ratings for Chronicle. I'll give this movie a 4 out of 5. Andrew!
For me, I'll give this a 4 out of 5. Vibrating, that's my favorite one.
Alrighty. I guess it comes down to me for a discussion topic for next time. But I feel like, didn't I do discussion last time, or am I tripping?
I wouldn't be able to tell you. I wasn't there.
Yeah, I don't know. Fuck it. Whatever. Let's talk about... Okay, I don't know if we've done this, and I'm gonna just take that as license to go ahead and do it, because I don't remember talking about it, so to the, like, one person out there that religiously watches Geeky Gentlemen, tough, you may have to hear me repeat my opinions. But I just think it would be interesting to talk about. Let's talk about fan edits.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah, it's a field that fascinates me. So yeah, let's go ahead and talk about fan edits, and that will be a fascinating discussion. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
And I am the champion of the oppressed.
And we are your Geeky Gentlemen, and we will be discussing things.